Hi there, this is just an introduction to SolidWorks 2019 in this case. So when you first open up SolidWorks, you get this. This is basically giving you the options of the opening or starting one of the fundamental file types. So part is exactly what it is, that's the actual 3D model. Assembly is a group of parts that are joined together into an assembly. And a drawing is orthographic projection, which is linked to part and assembly automatically. So this is what you'd kind of do in AutoCAD, generate these views, orthographic views. The big bonus with SolidWorks is that it does that automatically from the model. Come to that perhaps later on. So you need to select part, double click it or select it and then click OK. Before we do that, notice there's a SolidWorks tutorial here built in, and I'll show you those in a minute. There's another way of getting to those. So just as a quick overview of the interface, up here is a menu. But I've pinned that, so you may find that like that, and then you hover over that and you get to these menus. I tend to pin that in place because I use these menus quite a lot. You've then got the usual icons which you're familiar with. Typical menu system, pretty much found in most applications these days. The ones that you'll be interested in, I've got some extra ones here that you might not have, but the ones that you need to have basically are sketch and features. I think they're the only ones you really need. So down the left here you may not have that. This is something I've added in. Pretty tricky to get these around, but they do float, and so there's extra, more convenient toolbars basically. In fact, I'll get rid of that. Now, on the left here, there is, if you hover over this, it will tell you Feature Manager Design Tree. I can never remember what it's called. This is basically where you build your model. This lists every feature, every element that makes up your solid model. SolidWorks operates in a different way to 2D CAD, like AutoCAD. You basically build up as I say, features, design rules, relations, and that sort of thing, and I'll come on to those in a minute. And they are what, and SolidWorks runs through these to generate the model. Okay, so you don't really need to draw anything very accurately at all. You're actually telling SolidWorks a whole list of functions, if you like, as to what produces the model. I'll have something on screen a bit later. You'll see what I mean by that, but just for now, that's what that is. Feature Manager Design Tree. Across here you've got various icons which are there for like for convenience. They are duplicated. I pull in these menus here, and just by right clicking on these you can pull in extra panes and things. The ones you might need are the view and the heads up view, and there's another one, standard views, and maybe standard icons, which I think is these top ones. But to have a play around with those ones, it's really handy to have these here because you'll be using these views quite a lot. So the first thing to do is to, once you've got your part open, the other thing to look at is this here. This is a general sort of a box which can be, if you pull down here, you can use it for different things. So help, you can do a search for help. So for sketch, say it'll bring up this. Now one of the issues with this is that it doesn't come up. You have to refresh it, and then it should connect to the internet, if I remember rightly. We might have to do that. Yeah, click the home button. It's actually a web browser page built into as part of the help system. So lots of information here, very vast, shall we say, help system, but quite difficult to find things I've found, because you need to know what it's called in the first place in order to look it up. But oops, so try a sketch again. Okay, so it's now talked about sketching. You can define the area, the sub area, and narrow your search down that way. So there's only 328 options under sketching. FAQ for sketching, loads of information. Sketch tools, for instance, and it talks you through all of those. And there's just lots and lots and lots. If you know what you're looking for, it's a good place to search, but it does take some time. My recommendation is initially you don't even bother looking in there, but it's there if you want it. I would go online and Google it, look up videos. There's loads on there. Dassault, who are the makers of this, just whilst we're there, you should have licensing similar to that. Dassault have pretty good online video tutorials. Also built in to this is commands. So much like an AutoCAD, you can type in commands and they should come up. So now it's automatically generating a sketch for me and put me into line tool mode, but more of that later. So it's pretty powerful. Don't worry about the other things. You can have a look at those if you want to. Also, this is your Solidworks account, which you don't really, hopefully you've logged in automatically as part of the licensing. I don't think I've ever touched that. Also here, pull down from the question mark is another help sort of system. And this is the thing I want to just point out to you. This is a really good place to start. So you click that, SolidWorks tutorials. It splits the screen. Unfortunately, it doesn't split it very well. It leaves a gap. But you can do this, put that across to the side, and then judge that. And then those two are then locked, I think. It doesn't want to do it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So I'd pull that over to about there. You can size this. You can also zoom in and zoom out on this with control scroll wheel. And basically what this is a whole load of inline tutorials. This one here, Introduction to SolidWorks, will take you through building that thing, which is quite complicated, step by step, and also generate, I believe, the drawing file for it as well. So it does take, I would suggest that 1 hour is probably quite short. I think you probably need a little bit of time. Take your time over it, maybe take some notes, save regularly, and go through it and see if you can understand what it's saying. There are a few gotchas in there which don't quite, so let me just show you. There's a few things in here which don't quite tally. It does walk you through it. So previous and next topic. This, wherever you see this with the orange square around it, it does say it in here, but it sometimes gets missed. If you click that, it will flash up the icon in the actual application. So if you don't know where that is, you can just click that and it will show you. And even it will open up menus and flash, you know, the menu options. Sometimes it doesn't work. Just be aware of that, so don't get frustrated with it too much. Here it does say, look, so sketch in the circle, and it walks you through it. I would suggest if you read ahead slightly just to see where it's heading. So you're heading for this, and then stepping back and then following it. That can just knowing where you're going with it and what it's asking you to do is sometimes helpful. Right, so the basics of SolidWorks are that you have, oh, we get rid of that. You have things called sketches, which are basically 2D entities drawn on a plane. So under here, if you hover over these, you've got a front plane. You click it and it will tell you what it is. Top plane, right plane. Let's just say we're going to draw a front view. Actually, we'll start on the right hand view and we'll just show that using that icon there. So that's permanently displayed. Middle button, so the scroll wheel button, and dragging spins around. Now I've got maintain, I think it's y-axis vertical. If you, whilst you are spinning, if you right click at the same time, you get some options here like rotate about scene floor. So normally that would be off, and so now it's not keeping vertical. The ground is, if you like, not horizontal anymore. So I prefer to keep that. So it's scroll wheel, that's right, scroll wheel, right click as you're doing that, rotate about scene floor, but that's entirely up to you. Scroll wheel, zoom in and zoom out. You've also got, I haven't got those up, so I'll show you that another time. Sometimes you get the options down here for, oh, they're up here, sorry. Zoom in, zoom out for fit. So it's like zoom extents in AutoCAD and zoom to an area. You've also got some features here which is showing you how you display the model and automatically showing the views. Now this can be got to much more easily by pressing the space bar. In some cases you might get this, like it or loathe it, that option. If I now press that, it's giving me both now, which is basically I can then pick and choose sort of the glass box approach to these things. I'm not a fan, but it's there if you want it. Whoops, get rid of that. Essentially though, get your head round the views. The front view, which ends up being the front view or in the drawing file, if you click on it, is actually looking at the front plane. So you need to work out what's the front view. You can change it, but it's far easier if you get it right from the outset. So just spinning round. If I wanted to draw maybe that step shaft example, and I want it to be the front view to be like on the side of the cylinder, a bit confusing. I would start drawing things in like circles here and extruding them out, and I'll show you that in a minute. But it's just get your head around the fact that there's a everything you draw on the front plane, or everything you look at from the front plane, this one, that will appear as the drawing view in the drawing, as the front view, sorry, in the drawing view. Right, so let's say you want to draw a step shaft, so you can do this all in 3D if you wanted to, but it's way easier to look at things perpendicular, which is what that button does. So whatever you've got highlighted, if you press that, it will go onto that. But essentially I turn on the front as well. So select that and do that, or right click in it and select the show. It's just a toggle. you can see what I'm doing. So let's say we're going to select this, and I'm going to draw a sketch, and I'm going to start with a circle. This one's spun it round for me because I had that selected. Let me just show you that. If I don't have that anything selected, and I start a sketch and I want to draw a circle, it will prompt me. Well, it will wait for me to select something to draw onto. So this is the circle options, and if I then select here, I can draw straight onto that. All right. So I could start up there, and I could just do anything, and I can just press the escape key to cancel this command. So I can then move this around, and notice I'm moving it around on the plane. So a good idea, one really important feature about SolidWorks is that things have to be fully defined. And this is, you'll see this here. It says undefined. That's because I haven't given it a size, so it could just be any size, whatever it happens to be. And other rules, design rules that we put in could actually accidentally change that, and we might not want it. And also it can be positioned, it's not fixed in space, so that's definitely underdefined. So, but if I want to do that, the first I would thoroughly recommend, if you're starting like with a circle in this case, is locking onto the origin. So there's a couple of ways I can do that. I can either click and drag that, and you can see it associates it, and that little tiny yellow icon means that it's been constrained or snapped to that point, and it'll be forever at that point. And it's like a design rule, you can't change it. Well, you can go back and edit it, but unless you edit it, it will stay the same. Another way of doing this, which is fairly fundamental to SolidWorks, is Control left click and Control left click, and it brings up this option here, existing relations. Now for some reason I have got that point and that point. Let me just do that again. I think I selected the I think I selected the right hand pane by accident. So Control left click and Control left click the origin, like that. That's better. So this is these 2 points. Notice that when you draw a circle, it automatically puts a point in there for you, which is pretty useful. And when you refer to a circle, you can refer to its center point, or you can refer to its circumference when you're doing dimensions and such like. So I want to put an existing relationship here, which in this case I could make them horizontal. So therefore, when I look this way, from here perpendicular onto there, it's now horizontal with that. Or I could undo that, and it goes back up, brings me back to this point. Now what I actually want to do is put that on the origin. Now the quickest way in this case is to click and drag it, but I'm just doing this, showing this so you know how to do it manually. That puts it onto the origin. So once we've done that, we can click OK. Now if you don't click OK, SolidWorks is pretty good, then it doesn't cancel. It actually just says, well, okay, it effectively clicks it for you and says OK. So the other thing to note is that as I went into the sketch, this is depressed, showing I'm in sketch mode, but also I get this up in the bottom, sorry, top right corner. That is this symbol for sketches. You'll see that appear in the tree down here in a little while. And I can exit that sketch if I wanted to. Let's do that. So now I've just literally drawn one sketch with one circle on it. Whoop-de-doo. Here we can then turn that into a feature. So I want to do a boss extrude, and this is where the power of SolidWorks comes in. It's prompting me here for a plane on which to draw an extrusion, and then it'll let me create a new sketch, or I can choose an existing sketch. So what SolidWorks tries to encourage you to do is start with a feature, boss extrude, and then within that step, create a sketch, and then you exit the sketch, and then you can set the features, and then you come back up out of all of that. I find that a little bit confusing for the new user. It is faster, I suppose, and it's probably the way to do it eventually, but for the time being, start with sketches and then turn them into features. Unfortunately, the tutorial, remind you, it's under here, under these tutorials, they do it feature first with a sketch, what they call consumed within the feature, sort of embedded, but you'll see that in a minute. I'll show you that in a minute. So here it's asking for option 2, existing sketch, and you'll notice if I zoom in there, it's given it some depth already. Now, a couple of things I can do. This is a properties panel. Every feature and every sketch and everything you can ever draw will have a properties panel. Some are complicated, some are quite simple. Loads of options, as you can probably imagine. The key one here is that this is the default blind, but there's different. You can extrude up to a vertex, up to a surface, etc., etc. But here, the blind means up to an end point, and here I can adjust this. So let's just say I want that to be 50 units. Whilst I'm talking about units, you should it should default to down here mmgs, okay, but you can change that, but not in the middle of a command. I'll show you that a bit later. Just worth checking. If you don't get millimeters shown up here, it might say inches, etc. Stop what you're doing and just quickly change it down here. So here we can set this exactly. Here is draft, that is taper. So I can set a taper on it, so I can do like that, things like that, but I'm going to turn that off. I can also extrude in a separate direction as well, and so which is quite useful, but I'm not going to do that in this case. I could also make it a thin feature, but we'll come back to that. Notice here that it's said the selected contour for the boss extrude is the sketch that I selected. You can have several contours in there, so if I had several circles I could extrude them all at the same time. If there was a hole within this, 2 holes within the sketch, it would extrude to a cylinder with a bore through the middle, so the inside one would automatically go to a hole, which is quite useful. I can, if I'm happy with that, so 50mm is fine, I can do that, and it gives a sort of a shaded view of that. If I want to then change what that looks like, I can do this. I usually switch between shaded with edges and hidden lines. So in this case, that is not particularly useful. Did I pick the wrong one? I think I might have done. Oops. I'm not quite sure why it's not working. So look at that solid. That's interesting. I think there's a regen command if I remember rightly. Oops. Commands. Redraw. Yeah, I'm not sure why that's not showing hidden detail. So we'll go back to that. This does show some hidden detail here, not because I've got it selected. Press escape and try that again. There you go, that's better. That's because I had it selected like that. So from a circle extruded, you'll see here that it's in the design tree that these are all, don't worry too much about those, you've got these are all the things that are put in. I'll come back to that later perhaps, but this boss extrude has now been put in there. Okay, so if you click this and expand that out, you'll see the sketch, and if you press escape and deselect, you've got nothing highlighted, but you can hover over these and it will show you on the right hand side them highlighted orange. I would recommend that you get into the habit of changing these, so you just single click and then single click again, and then I usually put SK for sketch, and start to type in like shaft profile with capitals and such like. That can really help find features when you get a long list down here, and the same with boss extrude. I tend to keep this as a boss X or something like that, and then cylinder, let's call it part or section A or something. So we've got that. Now basically, if we want to, I'm going to put this back to, so you can see a bit more clearly, solid. There are other options here for perspective, so that you can, not very long items so you can't see it, but I tend to turn those off. The other option is, for viewing by the way, is Alt and middle screen, and it twists it around like that. So you can see that you can, get yourself disorientated rather quickly. So it's often useful, like I said, to pan around, and whilst you're doing that with the middle scroll wheel, middle button, right click and rotate about scene floor. It locks it like that, so now all I can do is that, and whatever happens, the ground is always where it should be. So let's say I want to extend this out with a smaller cylinder. What I'll do is I'm going to create another sketch, and I'm going to put a cylinder, or sorry, a circle on this face. I could draw it on here, but I can also draw it on this end face. Just make sure that you don't accidentally select these, which can be overlapping. It's usually quite good at letting you pick the thing you actually want. Choose that. And I think I've by chance picked up the origin. Okay, so let's just go back from that, and which is quite good, but I'll take you out of that. And now I've got sketch again, circle. So I'm going to draw on this face, and it's drawn on there. Okay, so if that happens, which is quite often the case, that's not a problem. So you can either you can just draw it there. You don't need to draw accurately in Solidworks, which is quite good. Now, once you've got that, you can escape out of that. It will click the green button, and then you can click and drag this down to the origin if that's what you want. Now, I haven't set this accurately. And notice it's put that relationship in there for me automatically for me, and I'm going to go fine. That's happy. I'm happy with that. Right, so what I should be doing in SolidWorks is at all times setting, fully defining these, as I mentioned before. So I haven't fully defined this really, but I will do this one. So in this case, if I select that, if I come out of the exit, come out of the sketch first, just to show you, this can be any size. If I go back and either through here or through here, if you select that, you get this little menu toolbar, edit sketch. Okay. You can also do that through here, right click, edit sketch. Yeah. Whoops. Press escape. I don't know what I've done there. Okay. And now the next thing you need to know about is once you've created a sketch, is smart dimensioning. Click the button there. If you smart dimension something, all you need to do is click the circumference of the circle, and if you move around, it will give you different types of dimension. It doesn't really matter at this stage which type, because you could sort all that out in the drawing, but I would suggest these are the clearest. Okay, now notice that was what I randomly happened to draw it at, 31.30, and this is where I can set this exactly. So I can type in 40 and press enter, and it'll do it. Let's set it. What I can also do is double click it and use this scroll wheel to set it like that. If you find this jumps in 10mm options, you can choose, I think it's here, and you can type in 1. So I can say, if I type in like 2mm here, okay, I find I have to go back in and choose it again. Whoops, choose it again, highlight it and make it the default, that one. Right, so now it should be going up in 2s. So you can, it's a bit awkward, but you can do it. Probably have to make default and then select that. Most of the stuff that you'll be drawing, you can select just 1mm increments. That just makes that a bit smoother. But generally speaking, when you're adjusting this, you probably will just be typing the values in. So let's make that, I don't know, 30. Okay, now this is just the sketch of a circle on here. Okay, so I'm happy with that. I'm done dimensioning it. I'm going to stop the dimension. I'm still in the sketch mode. I'm actually going to come out of sketch mode. And so what you've got is that with that on there. So I'm now going to turn that into a feature, boss extrude. And notice that it's remembered the length of this and said, oh, you want to do the same again, I'd imagine, but in this case I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put that to 30 millimeters as well, enter, and I don't want to think of any other features, so I'm going to do yes to boss extrude, thank you very much for that, and then you've got a sort of simple step shaft. If I want to go back and change something, notice just before we go there, this second boss extrude is here. So if I just put in here boss extrude, you don't have to do this, but it does make things section B. Poor naming, but keep it simple is the best way. And single click again, SK shaft. This is where it gets difficult. Profile. Small, I don't know, or end, so I can see the difference between those. And I'm going to go back to this original section here, which is, let's just pretend I've made it too large, or in fact I haven't set the dimensions on the diameter. Notice that that's the 50 I typed in, and it puts a smart dimension in automatically for you. And so I'll just get rid of that for a minute. And this one, for instance, that's got that diameter 30 here, which I did put in as a smart dimension, and it's added this dimension in as well. So if I want to change the length of that here, I could just type over and do that, 35. Or if I double click it, I think it gives me that, which I can then size with this and type in 32, I'll put it as. And the same with this, I can double click on that and do all the same things that I was doing before. Some systems this will update, sometimes it won't. So just put that down to, and if I just click OK, you should see that. Sometimes updates. What have I done there? Let's try this. Yeah, it's not want to do it. Depends on your graphics card. If that happens, this button here is your friend. It's rebuild or Control B. There you go. So we're building up a list here in the feature in the design tree. And so if I want to go back and change this section here, press escape. I can either do it like that, select it, or escape again to clear it, or I can try and select it here. It doesn't always work because you might pick up some other feature. So this is where the tree comes in handy. So I'm going to make sure I want that, and so if I select that, I can edit that feature and go back and edit the properties of it here. This is exactly what we put in before. So I can then change this to, I don't know, 46 or something, and press enter, and it's reduced that. So if I just go highlight on there, you'll see that that is now 46. Now what I didn't do is put a smart dimension on the circle. I forgot, so I can go back into the sketch, which is under those. Okay, so if we look under this section, is what it's based on is this sketch is what they call consumed by this feature, and it could be several things under there. I'm going to right click that, edit that feature. Notice I've gone into sketch mode and it's highlighted it for me. And if there's a lot of detail on there, I could, well, if there wasn't any detail, which is in this case I wouldn't need to swing around, but if there's a lot of detail, once you've got something selected like that, do the normal to button, and now you've got a proper 2D CAD view, if you like, of your sketch. And I can add my smart dimension, click the circumference, and there it was, some sort of random value that I typed in. Not good practice, so I need to go back and fix that. I'm going to put that as 42 and press enter. Notice that that's all done that, X there. Now if I go onto there, you'll see that it's set back to 42. Okay, so that's the basics of SolidWorks, and I will show you. Don't worry about this, you won't have this, by the way. I can show you how to do that. That's I think it's under here. It's quite a useful feature, that, actually, so it might be worth putting on. It's these two. Dynamic reference visualization. Very catchy, parent and child. What that's basically doing is showing you the relationship between these things. So if I look at this, hover over that, that's basically showing me that that the parent to this is that object. So this is dependent on that. Sorry, the other way around. The extrude is dependent on that. That's the parent of that. But also, if I look at this one, you'll see that that is dependent on the origin, because I placed that one on the origin and on the right hand plane. But this is also dependent on the previous boss extrude, because I drew this, which is part of this boss extrude, on the face of the first boss extrude. One of the downsides of SolidWorks, so you have to be really careful with, is that you get very complex dependency chains between features. So if I was to delete this, it would cause problems when it tries to then run through and reconstruct, because I've said to draw this based on this sketch, which is on this face, and if I delete that first feature, that face doesn't exist. And SolidWorks complains excessively, and if you get into that, Control Z is your friend. Control Z to undo, and if you've pinned this up, you'll get this menu, undo. Be aware that some features, sometimes things can't be undone. So right, I think that's basically all the essentials of the interface and the menu systems. In terms of the screen size, you might see that these icons are larger. There is a feature here, and you've got options, myriad of options, but the one to customize the buttons is this one, and it's quite simply put here. I'm not going to change it because it needs a restart, sometimes to get some of the icons to shrink. That's a Windows limitation more than anything. But I tend to put them larger, especially when I'm demonstrating or indeed when I'm using it. Close that off. One last thing to do is file, save, and it will tell you the usual way where to put that, and put that into a decent folder structure.